Hello and welcome back to the West Ham Breakdown podcast with Analytics United. I'm not doing the Analytics United production thing again because, frankly, it's just a bit weird. But it's a very special episode. It's a very special episode because the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that producer Charlie is with us. And that's because it's an end-of-season awards special. So, yeah, we're going to be going through, I think there's 6 awards. All the usual good stuff, Hammer of the Year, Signing of the Season, Unsung Hero, as well as a few games and goals, all that fun stuff that, frankly, the shortlists weren't particularly long for, so it was quite a nice, easy one prepping. But yeah, stick around. Hammer of the Year will be right at the end, so please do stay with us. But in amongst all that, well, I suppose the awards are in amongst it, actually. We're going to be doing a rough appraisal of the season, sort of, frankly, in a nutshell, where it all went wrong and why it went wrong. But yeah, as you'll see, as I said, Darcy and Charlie are here. Darcy, we'll go to you first. In a sentence, poetic if you want to, please summarise your thoughts of the season. Charlie, I'm going to ask you for a haiku, so get preparing.
Started poorly, ended a bit better.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. Charlie's now scrambling, trying to remember what a haiku is.
575. Hang on, give me 2
Come on,
secs.
you can do this. You can do this.
Quite impressive if you can do it that quickly.
Yeah.
But what about you, Cal? One sentence appraisal.
I think that's fair. God, it's tricky. I mean, I think you've actually done a very good job of doing it. I would probably say overspent, underdelivered.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Concise, accurate. Not much else left to be said.
Yeah, minimal wordage.
Yeah,
very good.
Exactly. If we were going to put it on a t-shirt, maybe that would be it. 4 words.
Maybe Julen Lopetegui can start selling them on his website.
Oh yeah, shout out to Julen, who will be getting I'd imagine some pelters today. Before we get onto that, time for a haiku.
It started very bad. It only got worse from there. I'm just glad it's over.
Oh,
very nice.
Very well done.
I think I nailed that.
Yeah,
it might be 6 at the end. I don't know, but there we go.
Well, on the spot, in less minutes than it had syllables. Yeah, I would say that's a valiant effort. So he's already been mentioned once, but I suppose Lopetegui. That is where it all started. It was a summer of change, both in terms of management and in terms of players. Lots of change. I think it's probably going to be a summer that has many similarities as we head into this transfer window. But I think there was a general sense of optimism before we played any games, certainly, because I think it felt like we'd done well in the window. Lots of shouts for West Ham have won the transfer window. Obviously, that gradually looked like a worse and worse take from many journalists as the season went on. But I think there was reasons to be cautiously optimistic, right? I think Lopetegui, whilst maybe not the most exciting appointment at the time, I think he certainly wouldn't have been any of our first choices, and I can speak for Jack on that as well. I think after we'd done some soul searching, a bit of research into sort of what his tactics look like, I think it very quickly started to look, on paper at least, like a sort of sensible transition move from Moyes to whatever the future of West Ham was going to be. I think most people were hoping for a slightly more positive, progressive, possession-focused West Ham, and Lopetegui felt like the person that would help take us a step closer to that, if not being him entirely in his own right. Charlie, go on. After your amazing haiku, I'll reward you with going first. Do you share this level of optimism? I know that, yeah, as I say, none of us were super fans of Lopetegui.
Yeah, I also think that last line was 6. Now I think about it, but anyway. Change over to done and we're fine. Yeah, it was, like you said, he was never a first choice by any stretch of imagination. I think the idea to go from Moyes to someone who is closer to what the ideal is, which is more possession, attacking football, all that kind of stuff that was spoken about at the time, but still had some sort of strong semblance of being able to defend was a good idea. I think that's kind of where it came from. And when you look at his time at Sevilla, for example, they weren't scoring lots, but they also were not conceding lots. And so this idea of like, well, we could dip our toe in that direction. We could step in that direction without going full send in it, was a good idea. Obviously, like you say, the window went very well. It was just specifically, as was the case for the rest of the season, and we'll probably say 15 more times over the course of this podcast, like the midfield just wasn't there for what he wanted to do in any way, shape or form. And it became very clear very quickly that that was a huge, insurmountable problem.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, like you say, when you factor in the context of how it all ended with Moyes as well, like that was a defence-first manager who wasn't defending. We were shipping more goals than we had done in ages. So I think going for someone with the track record of being able to coach a very stable, solid defence and then having the foundations to sort of build on top of, it was kind of like you took all the good bits of Moyes over those 3 or however many years, and then took away the counter-attacking stuff and brought in a slightly more exciting, albeit not that exciting, but a Spanish, basically. When I say exciting, I mean Spanish, which is basically possession.
Continental,
and
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And superimpose that on top. Obviously, in reality, it didn't work out. And I think, unfortunately for Lopetegui, his arrival coincided with a sort of shift in the Premier League, where athleticism has always been insane, but like particularly in midfield, like this season, now that we look back, felt like a real leap forward in terms of, if you look at the teams that have done well, how they've done well, it's just by being physically dominant. Like Bournemouth will run you off the park, Forest will run you off the park, either in transition, Bournemouth more so in midfield and counter-pressing. Man United had an atrocious season because they have no legs in midfield. We had a bad season because we have no legs in midfield. Tottenham really struggled because the legs they had, they lost through injury because of how intense they were. So I think that seemed to be a real trend, and we didn't jump on the trend, really. But for the first 3 games, and Darcy, as someone who watches most games more than twice, I'm speaking about you, not myself, let you in behind the scenes there to the listeners. But yeah, I feel like the first 3 games, there was sort of a relative amount of hope. Like, we obviously opened the season with a loss, but that was against an Aston Villa side who were coming into probably the season that they'd been most excited about in their recent history, having just qualified for the Champions League and all the excitement that comes with that. And I feel like that performance, whilst we didn't get the win, everyone was kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't mind this. And then obviously we go on and pick up a few wins, but obviously your memory of it will be better than mine because you were subject to watching it so much more. I just wonder if that is sort of, am I misremembering? Am I lying to myself, or was there actually a glimmer of hope prior to everything else that went wrong?
No, they're definitely, at least the alarm bells weren't ringing from day one. Like in that Aston Villa game, we created over 2xG. I think we had 52% of the ball as well. The obvious issue is that they also created 2xG, and we didn't realise that was going to start to become a theme. Yeah. But I think there were positives to take away from that. And then moving into the second week, so we played Crystal Palace and we actually beat them. But this is a game that I've referenced quite a few times throughout the season as being sort of I guess, a marker of the fact that maybe the team were... not necessarily that they weren't understanding or implementing what Lopetegui wanted, but they were so much stronger in different ways because the 2 goals that end up winning us that game both come from these really direct, aggressive transition situations that we would have seen all the time the season before. And that's why I've kept referencing it, because it was so clear from this point. And then when we move into the 3rd game week of the season, we come up against City, and then I really think that was the game where I think the cracks started to show a little bit, and it was a little bit like, oh, okay, we're maybe not here to compete in the way that we thought we were.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I agree. I think that was the sort of real alarm bells start ringing now, because under Moyes, even towards the end, to be honest, whilst we weren't picking up wins or results, I think the one constant throughout both his tenures was that no matter how bad we were, we would always, bar a few exceptions, be competitive in most games, whether we won or lost. And it was rare that we would witness a blowout. And I think in that City game, the big thing that stood out, apart from the fact we took an absolute spanking, was that the amount of space that was in midfield, it just felt so far removed from what we'd seen previously under Moyes, where the whole thing was block out the central channels, stay compact, make it difficult. And I think because we were trying to be slightly more expansive, whilst this sort of had some upside in possession in terms of we would get in the final third and we'd occasionally create, it meant that when we inevitably turned the ball over, because we had players that maybe their decision making wasn't quite up to scratch enough to be able to do the whole possession based stuff, because they're 3 games removed from a David Moyes counter-attacking season, you lose the ball and you've got all your players spread all over the pitch, and then you're just so easy to sort of carve through.
I mean, then just to bind that first goal, that Haaland goal.
Yeah,
I remember so vividly, like, because we were so spread, and it was just one tiny little misplaced pass. Like, it wasn't even a big mistake. It was a little misplaced pass, I think, into the feet of, I want to say, Paquetá, and then it just ends up like they nip the ball away and they pass it to Haaland, and he's in. I mean, he basically had the entire, what felt like the entire pitch to himself. And when you compare that to other Moyes games where he would just, and again, lots of people found it frustrating at the time, and I 100% understand why, but there was no space in the box. Like, City would not even get into the box, and he was just able to walk in and basically pass it into the net. Like, the comparison there is night and day. It was so huge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the game weeks that followed thereafter, I think 7 or so, where we only picked up 2 wins. I think one was against newly promoted Ipswich, which, frankly, with the ambitions that we came into the season with, you would have expected that we would have to win that game. And then we also beat Man United, but around all of that was just kind of mediocre to bad performances week in, week out. Then there was a shoot of hope, and I think I'll throw forward and promote extra time here, because whilst we're going to dot some awards throughout this podcast in extra time, where we do an extra half an hour or 45 minutes of further chat, which, given how much has gone on in the season, could be quite a punchy little number. But we'll be talking about some of the moments of the season, our personal favourite moments of the season, some individual performances, some frankly ridiculous that only Analytics United could come up with awards as well. But yeah, there'll be some stuff discussed in there, and I imagine some of it probably the opposition performances of the season might come from the Lopetegui era, because there was a few spankings that were handed to us, and there's an opposition performance award, both team and individual, and I wonder if this is the half of the season that those might fall into. So if you want to find the answers for that, please do sign up to the Patreon at patreon.com/Analytics United. 7-day free trial if you want it. We've got loads of cool stuff coming out over the summer. A summer where we're going to be doing a hell of a lot of transfer content, because frankly we need to make a hell of a lot of transfers. So makes our life very busy, but makes your life very interesting, because it means there's going to be loads of good content for you to consume. So yeah, please go and sign up there. You can also chat with us on the Discord and stuff. You get access if you sign up, and you can engage with us on the Patreon as well. So if you want to get involved and tell us what your award winners would have been in the categories that we've come up with, then yeah, please do.
I should say there will be, in the post for this on the Patreon, there is a Google form which has every single one of the awards we're going to be giving away. I will be doing a video going through those awards and seeing what your winners were, not just ours. Because there's some of these where I feel like, I'm not going to lie, I will have forgotten stuff. So it'd be nice to get people to just say stuff. So that'll be on the Patreon for the post for this show.
100%. Please do go get involved. And I suppose the reason I was sort of deciding to do it there is because one of the awards that we're going to cover in this first part of the podcast is Game of the Season. And game week 12, for me, a win away at Newcastle was a moment where it felt like things maybe were changing. Maybe Lopetegui had wrestled some control and sort of galvanised the team. And it really felt like a moment of hope. And I was like, we're back. Tactically, Darcy, what changed? Why did this feel like such a hopeful moment? Because we'd obviously gone from getting absolutely pumped or not being in games to then going away to one of the most hostile stadiums in the country Am I It was away, wasn't it?
Yep, it was away.
Good.
You're
I
right.
was just like, can I remember this season? Yes, I paid a lot of attention. Of course I did. But yeah, a comfortable 2-0 win away, where midfield had been our massive issue for the 11 weeks prior to that. We're going away against one of the best midfields in the league, and we control. We don't let them lay a glove on us. So yeah, why did that happen, and why did it not happen for any of the game weeks that came after?
Well, the second half of that question is, I wish I knew, to be honest, because I really thought Lopetegui had sort of stumbled upon whether it was on purpose or whether it was forced by the conditions, and who was available at the time. But he'd sort of stumbled upon what had previously made West Ham very good, which was defending a lot deeper, being more compact, reducing the distances that midfield has to actually cover. So not asking them to go out and press massive distances and then recover in, actually just asking them to sit in a mid to low block and defend like that. And then playing into our sort of aggressive, direct counter-attacking, and not always counter-attacking, but I think direct is a more appropriate word. Those sort of conditions that make our attackers do their best work, those are the kind of situations they got in that game. And because those two kind of married together, it was almost like it's almost like the players on the pitch sort of remembered how to do this. And I think that's why it works so well. And my only reasoning for why we didn't continue to see it is because I don't think that's the Lopetegui way. I think he compromised for that game. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure why it came out in that game. But then because that wasn't part of what he was planning or building or wanted to do, instead of sort of embrace some of those principles, he seemed to just go straight back to what he was doing before, which I think was a real shame, because really that was the opportunity for Lopetegui to not that Lopetegui needs to prove himself to anyone, but it would have been the opportunity to prove that he is adaptable. He's not tied to just one way of playing. But yeah, and I also agree with you. This is definitely in my debate for one of our games of the season.
All right then. So Charlie, we've got 2 votes here, or 1.5. I was fairly non-committal from Darcy there, but I'll let him off. Game of the season. Do you agree? Would it have been this? I mean, it's fairly slim pickings, isn't it, realistically? But I can think of a couple more that maybe are in with a shout.
Yeah, I think it's definitely up there for me. The one that I am going for is the Arsenal win, the 1-0 win. Probably because having grown up in that area, it just means ever so slightly more to me to get that win. Yeah. But it also just felt like they were on this big run of form going into, I can't remember how long they were unbeaten for, but it was definitely for a while. Is the title challenge on? Is it going to happen this season? Blah, blah, blah. And then we just absolutely pooed the party out, which is a beautiful thing and a weird way of saying it, but I've done it out loud now.
Well,
and it will be...
Pooed the party out is...
Listen,
sort of seriously, don't type that into AI.
Not a wordsmith.
Don't let that
or
AI
Google will say search off, because it's bad scenes. But yeah, that's the one I would go for personally. Like you say, the Newcastle match was definitely up there as well. But the Arsenal one just meant that slightly bit more, and just felt that a little bit more. I don't know, maybe because it was slightly further into the season, where it wasn't almost we're back at this point. It was just like, oh my god, we've done it. And I think that sort of that memory has lasted a little bit longer for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that was the other obvious one that I was thinking. Probably that or the Newcastle one. I would also throw a win at Old Trafford in. I know that the context kind of takes away from it because, yeah, cool, we went and won at Old Trafford for the first time in however many years, but also like factor in the quality of opposition, and it was kind of a non-contest really. They were just not there. It kind of took the shine off it. I suppose if you're a match going away fan, it probably didn't, because you would have been inside Old Trafford bouncing around. So I think for those people, it probably might have been the game of the season, just for the sort of historic nature of it. But I think performance-wise, it has to be really Newcastle or Arsenal. Interesting that in both those games we won fairly comfortably, maybe less comfortably against Arsenal, but we defended resolutely, and we had far less possession than the opposition on both of those days, which maybe is a sort of sign of the season, right? It's maybe something to take away. Obviously, the United win at Old Trafford, I think we had more of the ball. It certainly was a slightly different performance in terms of its approach, because obviously Potter was trying to exert control against a Man United team that couldn't even find control on the keyboard. Oh, boom! There we
It's
go.
big.
There
It's
we
huge.
go.
Oh,
I tell you, it's better than poop at
ready
the
for
party. I'll
something?
tell you that much.
Ready for something even better than that. That was me stumbling, trying to think of a way to save it before I ran out of words, and now we're going to segue smoothly into save of the season. But you can't go for me picking control on the keyboard.
Giddy, are you sure? Because that's a late contender. Oh my lord.
I think this should be a quick one as well, really. I don't think there's that much because all the goals were going in. But
Well,
but for me, it's that Areola save against Newcastle at the. I think it was at home for us, where it comes off Kilman, it's deflecting towards the goal, and he sort of like claws it from behind. It's probably his best moment of the season. So.
yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that was on my list of contenders. I think what actually won it was it the
Not actually
De
sure.
Bruyne one.
yes, it was
Yes,
the De Bruyne one.
it was,
Yeah.
Which is similar-ish, right? That he sort of has to backpedal to track the movement of the ball.
But
I think
it's at a more
savable.
favourable height.
Yeah, agree. The only other one I would chuck in, because it feels wrong to not include Fabianski, given it's the last time we will see him in a West Ham shirt, was a save away at Forest, I think, when Ramon Sosa has a shot from outside the box and it's curling right into the top bins, and 40-year-old Fab manages to stretch out and get his fingertips to it and push it over the bar. So bit of Fab prop there. That will bring us to the close of the first section. But I will just quickly, and I think I know the answer already, but it's on my pod notes, so I will ask it. Was getting rid of Lopetegui when we did the right decision? Anyone?
I mean, yeah. I reckon it was the wrong
was.
decision because personally, it probably should have been slightly earlier than it was. But yes,
That's very valid point. Very valid point. It certainly felt, didn't it, after those big losses started to rack up. I'm thinking, we've talked about the Arsenal win, but we definitely did get pumped by Arsenal as well, from memory. Leicester, getting pumped by Leicester, that went down.
yeah, Rude's first game.
Horrible game.
Yeah, just ugly. And it was one of those where it was like we actually had so many shots. But I think that point I was like, well, this is the death knell, right? Because like even in games that we should be winning, and based on what actually happened in the game, we should be winning as well, and we're still coming away where the scoreline looks atrocious. So I think at that point it's like you're fighting a losing battle, and that's not even factoring in the Liverpool and City games as well, where just blowout after blowout after blowout, and so many of the same themes cropping up in all of those, which I think is, once it starts to become thematic and not just sort of one-offs, then I think you have to make the change. Obviously, whether it looks like the right decision in hindsight is a different question, because things didn't necessarily turn out much better in the second half of the season. So we'll pop in a pause there, where we will appraise Graham Potter. So, Potter, for those of you that have been listening for the last few months, we've talked a lot about him. We've done a lot of appraising Potter already, so I think really, just more so not to bore you than anything else, this section should be a little bit swifter. But I'll set my stall out early doors and say that if I had to say which of the two halves of the season I preferred, given that neither of them were particularly good, I would still say that I preferred the Potter half of the season. I know that there's a lot been said about, well, it's time to get rid of Potter. We were 14th when he came in, and we finished wherever. Blah blah blah. He didn't improve. He didn't take us any further. We should have just stuck with Lopetegui. Whatever. I think for all the reasons we discussed in part one, we shouldn't have stuck with Lopetegui, because what's to say that we didn't just continue to get blown out week after week and then we go down? I think Potter came in. Sure, he's not like delivered crazy results and improvement, but also I think you have to accept that he's working with a squad that was massively underperforming and hasn't really had any opportunity to do any sort of work to it. In regards to transfers, bar obviously a failed Evan Ferguson loan move, which, what can you do? It wasn't even like he failed on the pitch. He didn't even get on the pitch, and I can't imagine Potter planned for that, which is a shame for all parties. But yeah, I think just in terms of steadying the ship, I know it's not the most exciting thing ever, but I think if that was his remit, and his remit was to come in and stop the blowouts and sort of stabilise and damage limitation, etc., however, whatever way you want to spin it, I think whilst he probably still underperformed, because I think Sullivan and those above will have expected a little bit more, I think if his task was to keep us up and then build this summer and then really be judged from there, he did it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that either of you agree. Darcy, I'll come to you first. What's your sort of general overview of the Potter project thus far?
I mean, it's an improvement on what we got in the first half of the season, and to me, I think when you make a change mid-season, that's really all you can hope for. If you're, I mean, context always matters, but I think if you're a team in our position, all that you can hope is that results, but also just performance gets a bit better. And Potter did that by basically just reducing variance. I don't think we conceded, there was only one game where we conceded 3 goals under Potter, whereas that happened, I think, five or six times we conceded over 3 goals under Lopetegui. And that game where we conceded 3 goals was the Brighton game, where they bang in 2 from range towards the end of the season. And then we also haven't scored more than 3 goals in many games, but we've been scoring a little bit more or a little bit less sporadically, let's say. We tend to at least be getting goals. So on those kind of baseline metrics, things that are, the fundamentals of football, goals and conceding goals, he has made us better. There's way less variance. Like you said, we're way less likely to get blown out. And that is important for this season. Doesn't mean that I'm not a bit wary and a little bit worried at this point about next season. But I think a summer for Potter will do him good. But yeah, I would say that whilst I'm not happy with his stint, I can't say that, oh, well, he's done a great job. He has done exactly what is required, even though it hasn't been pretty. And he has got, week on week, by the end of the season, the most out of Jarrod Bowen. He wasn't necessarily doing it at the start, but by the final game, he'd started to work it out. And I think when you weigh everything up, that is probably the most important thing for our football club, among a couple of other things. But I think at an individual level, getting the most out of Jarrod Bowen is really important. So it's good that he was able to do that, because Lopetegui certainly wasn't.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think still disappointing, but I think that certainly the last 5 or so games, I would say as well, like picking up that win against United, finishing the season on a win, but like even results aside, just sort of the levels that players were performing at when Potter arrived and the levels that players have reached towards the end of the season. I think if a manager's job is to get the best out of his players and put them in the best possible position to look good as a team and as individuals, I think Potter's certainly done a better job than Lopetegui at that. I think he's got, as you say, Bowen firing on all cylinders. Wan-Bissaka's looked, I mean, he didn't even look that bad under Lopetegui, but he's looked even better under Potter. I think he's brought Ward-Prowse back from a loan and made him a contributor, albeit not super impactful, but that's a player that Lopetegui looked at in pre-season and said, I'd literally rather loan you to a Premier League rival than have you in my squad. There's no place for you, which is kind of baffling, really, when you think how crap the midfield was once he'd got rid of him. Souček obviously been involved as well, a player that everyone sort of assumed that would have no place in Potter's system, because when you think Potter, you think possession, you think high press, you think building out from the back, and none of those things you really associate with Thomas Souček. But in spite of that, Potter's managed to find a place for him in his squad that's allowed him to still contribute and be one of our most important players in the back end of this season. So I think for those reasons, along with the fact that, as Charlie mentioned in the first part of the pod, we beat Arsenal. He sort of, against his principles as well, he sort of accepted that, okay, I'm not going to be able to play Arsenal the way I want to play them here, but what I have got is a bunch of players that could sit in and just pick our moment, and we did that so well. But I think also a bit of variance in terms of, we beat United by playing possession-based football. We looked good against Villa and Chelsea by playing high-pressing type of football. But then in the same breath, we've had nice counter-attacking performances, whereas I think Lopetegui was, well, he had many faults, but one of them was his sort of dogmatic commitment to his ideals, even in the face of them not working. And the only time he really deviated from that was, as we discussed, that win against Newcastle, where he then didn't take any learnings from that. He just diverted straight back to what wasn't working. Agreed. See, here, says the dog. But Charlie, I having spent the whole season breaking down West Ham with you and discussing things on and off camera, I assume you're in agreement?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I almost when we were coming up with the list of awards, I did almost put in best manager just for the bants because we have had more than one, and there's very few chances where we actually get to have that sort of vibe. But I think I have enjoyed some of the revisionism a little bit about Lopetegui at the end of this season. I've had a few conversations with some friends where I would be talking about. I would say something along the lines of, "Oh, we're defensively better," and they're like, "What are you talking about? We're still conceding." I'm like, "Yeah, but do you not remember what it was like? Do you not? Is Chelsea left our collective memories, bro? They were just wandering through us like there was nothing there." And I think Potter has. I think some of the criticisms you could level at Lopetegui, for example, what you were saying now about being too dogmatic and too set in his principles, I think you can level a similar criticism sometimes at Potter. And I think, for example, when you look at the fact that we've seen the two up front with Bowen and Kudus maybe more often than any of us would have liked to see, I think that is definitely something that next season we would not be enjoy. None of us want to see. None of us want to see that as a front two happening. But obviously the big difference between the two of them is one of them had a summer transfer window and the other one got Evan Ferguson on loan, and that's it. So yeah, I have a lot of hope going into next season. There are obviously reservations because the second half of the season still has not gone anywhere near where it could have and should have been. But I certainly have more hope that there is someone now in charge who is capable of getting. I mean, look at the impact that he's had on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, for example, has been huge. And he was trying under Lopetegui, but was being asked to do something that was so completely foreign to him. Whereas now we've got someone who's doing some stuff. So there's a lot more positivity in that sense, if you're talking specifically between the two.
Nice. Well, brings us on to another one of our awards. I don't think either Lopetegui or Potter are going to win this one, sadly. But it's the Unsung Hero Award. I have a feeling they may have already been mentioned, at least by one of us. But Darcy, I'll chuck to you first. Unsung Hero?
Yeah, like I actually found this one quite a hard one because I guess by definition it's sort of like it's like an unpopularity contest, if you get what I'm saying. Who did the fan base in general maybe not rate? And for that reason, I've gone for Max Kilman. I know for within AU, a lot of us would have been considering him as like one of our top three for Hammer of the Year, but I don't necessarily think that translates to the rest of the fan base, essentially, who maybe see him differently or don't look at what he's doing in as much detail as we do, or appreciate the kind of things that he brings. Particularly his first, I'd say maybe 2/3 of the season, I think were so quietly impressive and went sort of unacknowledged because as a team we were playing so poorly. But things like dominating his duels and then not wasting the ball afterwards, actually looking to bring it down and then playing out or clipping a long ball, even like setting away counter attacks at certain points, I feel like if we were playing well would have been highlighted and clipped up the whole for a whole week after they happened. But because there was so much negativity around the club at the time, and rightly so, we were definitely not playing well. I feel like the period where Kilman probably was our best player maybe wasn't noticed by the majority, and therefore I'd probably have him as unsung hero. Although I think there's a very strong case for Aaron Cresswell as well, and he was sort of just behind. I'd say just a very close second.
Darcy channeling the spirit of Jack while he's away, giving Cresswell and Kilman some love, and rightly so. I'm glad you brought up Kilman in particular. I think he's come in for a lot of stick, and I think the price tag that we paid doesn't help him because I think team form sort of makes people look at individual form differently. It massively influences how people consider individual performances. You can have a good game in a loss, it's possible, but you don't remember them, and then when you look back and remember that we paid almost 40 million for Max Kilman, it makes it look even worse. But yeah, I think he's been one of our most consistent performers. I don't think he's put a foot wrong too many times. I think sure, there's been mistakes, but also how many of those mistakes were a symptom of a system that maybe shouldn't have being used anyway, quite frankly, certainly in some moments. But yeah, and Cresswell also a great shout. just needs to be mentioned at some point anyway, doesn't he? Because we're not going to get to mention him again, really. Because Charlie will find a way to mention him, no doubt. Charlie, anyone else? There's one other name that I guess is in my head, but I'll see if you mention him first.
It's Andy Irving. No one's saying it. Why are we not talking about it? He's my hero. Yeah, when we were talking about this award, I did just jokingly call it the Piss Boiler Award, and that's probably because I'm going to say Mavropanos really annoy everyone.
Ooh,
but I'm going to say
wow, okay, nice.
But I'm going to say Mavropanos because I think Kilman, I think was my original. My original thing was Kilman, and I hadn't actually thought of Aaron Cresswell, much to my disgrace, if we're being honest about it. I hadn't actually thought about him. But the thing is, with Mavropanos, is to me, I've taken this award as the guy who gets the most undue hate, in my opinion. And I think it is him. Like, when you're talking about you're talking about a third choice centre-back who he has obviously made some big old mistakes, big clangers. We can all think of at least two of them straight off the rip. But then outside of those mistakes, a lot of the time he has really solid performances. And actually, for where we're going as a football club, stylistically, he's kind of the perfect first step towards that and perfect third choice centre-back. If you were asking me, and this is maybe a hot take, I said this on some show last week, I don't know what it was, it might have been Q&A on the Patreon, I don't remember. But if you asked me next season, who would I rather see start the first game, Todibo or Mavropanos, I would pick Mavropanos. Like, and again, I'm not trying to annoy people when I say these things, but like, I just think he has been significantly better than we collectively give him credit for. And it is because of these huge clangers. And those clangers are bad. Those clangers are real bad. But that's why he's third choice and not first choice. And I think that's kind of where I land on him. I think we just don't give him the credit he deserves for the job he's done. And for the price we've paid, I'm very happy with him as a third choice centre-back. But again, I cannot stress enough how it should be Andy Irving. He's the boy. What more can he do? He came in, controlled games, nice passing, ran about a bit, you know. What? He got into the Scotland squad. What are we doing here, guys? Disgrace. Andy Irving. Point.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up Xavi Valero, actually. I was kind of hoping.
Oh my Lord, don't even start. My heart's not ready for it. My heart's not ready for it.
Survivor. Out-survived so many managers, but his time has unfortunately come. But yeah, no, I can get behind the Mavro shout. I think, yeah, the sort of looking at it through the lens of who gets the most flack unnecessarily. Any player that is subject to being booed when they come onto the pitch, having not even kicked a ball yet, has to really be in with a shout for Unsung Hero. And I think we've made it clear throughout the season where we all stand on the idea of booing someone before they've even been able to contribute on a match day is just frankly insane. Even more so when you consider that actually his performance levels this season have been nowhere near as bad as people think they have been. Everyone's sort of dining out on those mistakes that he's made and just assuming that a mistake is going to happen before he's even come onto the pitch. So yeah, I think that's actually a great shout. I hadn't even considered it, but I can definitely get behind it. The only other one I was going to give, and he could probably win this every year, but maybe he's in less with a shout this season because he seems to have really changed opinion of him. I remember this time last season, people saying that Thomas Soucek should never play a game for West Ham again. He's got nothing to offer post Moyes. He can't play football. He's got no technical ability. I don't know how he's a Premier League player. He's slow. And now people are... in the majority now, I would say, are saying that it would be ridiculous if we let him leave. He has to get a contract extension. He is what West Ham are. He represents all of our values. And that, in a nutshell, is a way of me saying the fickle nature of football fans, really. But you know what? I'm pleased that fans have got behind him because I think he does represent everything you want a West Ham player to represent. And the fact that he himself has come out and said that he wants to stay in a season where many players I've questioned whether they actually want to play for the club or whether they'd leave, having someone that can do the things that he does, but also having someone in the dressing room who kind of like Fulkrug has in terms of being outspoken about the levels that he demands. It's someone that will call you out if you're not pulling your weight because that's how much he cares. I think is really important, especially when you're losing a Cresswell and a Sofal and a Fabianski in one window. And to some extent, even Ings, you know, like I know he didn't contribute much, but from everything we've heard, he's great on the training ground. He's a guy that's played at the top level. Sure, he didn't actually do much at West Ham, but setting the standards, I would imagine he is also a contributor. So yeah, big love to Souček as always, but I think he's contributed so effectively this season in spite of everyone's presumptions that he probably actually isn't really a contender for this award, because he is bordering on sung now, I would say. And the final award of this section before we go into another break, and we can probably rattle through these, but it's goal of the season. It's a fun one. Truth be told, I struggled to think of that many bangers, but maybe that's just because of season fatigue. And I've spent so much time this season talking about West Ham. But the one that stuck in my mind, and therefore I have to nominate it, because if I couldn't remember any others apart from this one, then this must be my goal of the season, was Jared Bowen away at Brighton. I think when he takes the ball over his shoulder, outside of the boot touch, like brings it down, traps it dead in the box, and then just sort of rolls it across the face of goal into the bottom corner. Just the sort of skill level to be able to do that. And I know we've seen him score some great goals in the back end of the season as well. One in particular in terms of the ability to take a ball out of the sky, touch, and then finish. But this one, I just think it was the way that sort of, I think anytime someone takes anything out of the sky over their shoulder, it just looks so impressive, doesn't it? It's like, it's something you wish you could do. And if when you do it in the park or at five-a-side, you wish there was a camera, because no one's going to believe that you did it. But to see it done so nonchalantly, it was just, yeah, it was just one that stuck out in my mind in terms of like technical ability, from a player that, again, I think people now are onto the fact that he's one of the best wingers in the league. But I think prior to that, there was a lot of sort of, he's a brute, he trained on potato fields, he's a great finisher and great at popping up in pockets for space. But I don't think anyone really thought of him as like super technical in terms of his delicate touch. But I think he's really sort of shown that. So yeah, for me, being the standout goal that I can remember, it has to be that. But I'm hoping that the two of you are going to remind me of some other bangers that I've forgotten about. Let's go, Darcy.
Yeah, mine is it's more recent. It's the team goal that we scored as the first goal against Manchester United. I think it's just one of the nicer goals that we've scored in the last couple of years as a whole team, especially as, I mean, scoring via our own possession has been our big weakness all season, converting long stints of possession into an actual quality chance. I thought that was a clear sign that actually we are capable of doing that. You know, I think that whole move incorporates like 32 passes, and we end up activating the kind of thing that we've struggled to activate all year to get a low cross in. And I like that Souček ends up scoring it as well with such a Souček finish that he doesn't even know about. But everything up to that point is of a really good level. And yes, it's against United and they finished below us, and we should beat United and we should be creating opportunities in that way against United. But we haven't done that all season. So to finally see us do it and see basically every player involved, I think was, you know, just a small reward at the end of a tough watching season.
Yeah, nice. I also appreciate that you just got a real sort of loaded dig in there at any Man United fans that might have landed on this video by saying we should beat United. And yeah, it's United. Yeah, rub it in, man. Rub it in. How often is this going to happen?
We should beat United this year.
I'll put a timestamp in the description that just says Darcy praises Manchester United. So when they click on it, it'll just get to that straight in there. No message. Screw you.
Yeah. Go on, Charlie. What's your goal of the season?
Interestingly, the ones that came straight to my mind, but none of the ones that we mentioned already. The Emerson free kick against, was it Arsenal?
Yeah.
Which has the beautiful thing of not only being a top bins beautiful free kick, but also barring in, which always just feels better.
And also like a player that when he stepped up, I was like, nah, why, surely not you.
Like, he doesn't take free kicks.
Why are you taking this one? I've never ever seen you take a direct. Oh, and like before I'd even finished my sentence, I was like, okay. Fair enough. Maybe take the next one.
Channeled Dimmy Payet with a beautiful free kick. The Jared Bowen goal against Wolves. Yep. The one where he gets the ball from, I want to say it's Kudus on the right hand side, and just somehow manages to wiggle his way into a shooting position and sort of swerves it into the bottom corner. I think that's just that's like Jared Bowen. It's just clicking just at his best. Like, oh, that's what he's capable of. It's ridiculous. But mine is the late on Bowen against, is it Forest?
Yeah.
The one where he
touch and bang.
up like that way, bang,
Yeah,
and it just
yeah.
smashes it in, which is the most just like technical, have that, bang, bosh, whatever you want to call it. Just that's a goal of the month contender. It hits net, you're like, yep,
Yeah.
he's done it. Big.
It's giving
that's
like
my one.
proper Barclays vibes as well. I know that's such a cringe thing to say these days, but like that is a sort of match of the day 2008-9 goal of the season contender, and I love that. We need more of that. Whether we'll get it, who knows? But I don't know. It felt like towards the back end of the season, there's a few little storylines and plot lines and trends happening tactically that made me think maybe we're heading back into a sort of Barclays-esque vibe. I don't know what it would be now. Monzo, maybe? Revolut?
Revolut. It's a Revolut man, that guy. He's a Revolut man.
Something in there about a tactical revolution.
Oh,
but there's a nice way
almost
to...
there.
There's a nice way to end part 2 with another shit pun. But yeah,
Don't worry, there'll be more of them in part 3. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure you come back where Darcy has prepared a lovely little season in numbers quiz for me and Charlie to compete in. I was going to say more importantly than that, but you know what? No, that's the most important part of part 3, and that's why you should come. But we'll also be doing signing of the season and hammer of the year, which, yeah, I think there'll probably be some debate there. So yeah, come back and get involved. So, as promised, back for part 3 with what has been dubbed in my notes, not a quiz, but kind of a small quiz, our season in numbers, hosted by none other than Darcy Cox himself. So, I'm going to pass over the reins for a second, where you're going to take us through, I think, 3 quick-fire questions for me and Charlie to see who comes out on top.
Yeah, well, there's 3 topics. There's 6 questions. So we've got our best and worst expected goals performances, our best and worst expected goals conceded performances, and then our lowest and highest possession performances. I think we'll start with XG. So from each of you, what do you think was the game this season where we recorded the highest XG?
Okay. Off rip, I'm going to think outside the box, and I'm going to say it was actually in the game we lost to Leicester. Because I remember being so shocked about the fact that we lost, but that doesn't mean to say we didn't create even more against other sides.
That's a great shout. I was going to say, I went more conventional. I was thinking the game against the Ipswich one, where we scored, I think we scored 4 in it. I think it was 4-1 in the end. That was the one that was in my mind, at least. But I think that's nice outside.
1 point to Charlie. There we go.
See, why did I try and think outside the box? I just want to say for everyone
as well, I just need everyone to know, last time we did a statistics-based quiz, not only did I get destroyed, it was a genuinely mild embarrassment. So I'm happy now. 1 point, I'm good with.
Bosh, she's back.
Yeah, you were right. You were very close. Sorry, Cal. That was the second highest performance, and it was a loss. And interestingly, and speaking to like the reduction of variance under Potter, all of our top 5 best XG performances came under Lopetegui, which I think is quite interesting because we were not free scoring at all, but all of them came under Lopetegui. I think it's top 6 actually. It's not until we get to the Manchester United game, which is 7th, where we get a Potter performance. And then what about the opposite of that? So our worst expected goals performance, so our worst attacking performance statistically of the year.
Go on, Charlie. I'll let you go first, seeing as you're in the lead.
I reckon. I can't remember us doing. I'm trying to think about games where we just did nothing, and that get the early season smashing by Forest. I can't remember a single thing we did in that game. And the Liverpool. Did we have moments in that Liverpool? You know, the Liverpool game where we got battered 5-0. Did we have moments in that? I can't remember. I'll say Forest because I can't remember Liverpool if we actually had any moments because we're at home. So I'll say Forest, but
I'll go with the Liverpool game then.
Okay.
But Forest was my initial.
Charlie.
Yeah.
Why
did I say? Well, yeah, I'll let you go first, given that you're winning. As if
mind games. It's a beautiful thing, and I took it, my friend. I took it gladly.
This is it. All my attempts.
Game week 10, 3-0 loss to Forest away. We made just a 0.1 expected goals. So yeah, really not a classic Lopetegui managerial performance. Let's move on to what do you think our best defensive performance was? So least expected goals conceded.
I'm going to jump in because I don't want This is my second attempt at mind games, so we'll see if it wins. But I don't actually have anything. Let's go.
Before you answer, what I will say is there are 2 games that are top. They're joint top.
Joint top.
So if you get either of those, you can have a point. If you get both, you can have 2.
Ooh. Oh, I really don't know. Charlie, have you got anything? No, I tried to psych you out.
I'm trying to think what games.
I know it's hard to think.
To be honest, I've just got the relegation candidate games in my head. That's all I've got in my head are just games against relegation teams. They must at least be in the ballpark. And if there's 2, then it's worth a shout. I'll go Southampton because it feels like it's in the ballpark potentially.
Okay, I hear you. I'll go.
I tell you what, and if you want a second one, I'll say Ipswich as well. Screw it, we'll go for that too.
I'll go Leicester, but the 2-0 win rather than the other game.
Do you want to throw a second in there, just in case?
I'll chuck in the other Leicester game as well. Why not? While we're here, I know they won, but
imagine.
Again, I feel like it was one of those. I was like, how did this happen?
Well, Charlie, you've skirted around the top 2. You've got the 2 directly outside of that. Leicester was the top one. It was Leicester, that 2-0 game that you mentioned. And then the other one was early on in the season, game week 6 against Brentford. You managed to limit them to just 0.4 expected goals, which, I mean, there's a performance that's aged quite well because Brentford create against everyone. So... Pretty good performance. I don't remember the game too well.
Bring Lopetegui back, I reckon. Should bring him back.
And then, on the negative end of the spectrum, what was our worst defensive performance of the season?
I'll
let Cal go first, and then I'll pick a different one.
There's a few contenders here, obviously, but the performance in my mind that stood out as being particularly atrocious, and the scoreline felt flattering on us, even though we lost, was the loss to Chelsea at home, where I just feel like they could have beat us like 7-0. But yeah, it could have been any one of those blowouts, but I just remember that being particularly bad.
Okay.
That's a great shot. I think the one that came into my mind was Liverpool 5-0. It's got to be.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Both wrong. Wrong.
Okay.
Yep. It was the 5-2 against Arsenal where we conceded 3.5. Then it was that Liverpool game. Then it was the City game. And also all our worst 5 defensive performances also came under Lopetegui. So
there we go.
Some of our best attacking performances, but some of our worst defensive performances. So you can see it actually demonstrates the variance perfectly in the results there.
Yeah, and you can't move forward with that amount of variance because you can't plan anything with any degree of certainty. You can't. It's just way too much risk involved with little to no reward. Yeah.
Okay. Final 2 points. Final 2 points up for grabs. So the first one is let's start with our highest. So our highest possession performance of the season.
I think Ipswich last game of the season was pretty high.
See, I just initially I thought Forest, but just because the style of football they play, so I just went straight Forest. But Ipswich is actually a great shout. I'll stick with Forest.
Which Forest game is that?
That suggests that one of them is right, so be careful which one.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I would say the Forest game at the beginning of the season.
Okay. And what was your answer, Cal?
The last game of the season, Ipswich away.
No, you're both actually very close. So that Ipswich game was 58. Oh wait, Charlie, you're not close. The Forest game at the end of the season was our second highest. That was 60% possession, but our highest was that loss to Leicester, the 3-1 loss to Leicester with 61% possession.
Damn.
Under Lopetegui, I mean, it kind of says everything, right? We lost 3-1 and almost had 2/3 of the ball. And then finally, our lowest
Arsenal won
amount of possession.
Sorry, I'm not waiting around. I need points. I'm not waiting around.
Charlie?
I would have said City or Arsenal. I'll stick with City for the differences.
No, you're very unlucky, Charlie. City is 33%,
what, man?
but Arsenal is 32%.
Oh, okay.
So it's Arsenal.
Whew.
It's Arsenal.
Great hosting, Darcy. You had me all over the place there. I was sweating. Very good.
What the quiz does.
So
I don't know what the scores were. I wasn't counting, so I hope you.
I take it back, bro. Terrible hosting.
It was either 2-2 or 3-2 to Cal. I don't remember which way. Either way, it's a nice time to promo. There's a quiz show that starts this week, potentially, maybe the beginning of next week, on the Patreon, patreon.com/analyticsunited. Link in the description below. I won't be facing Cal, but hey, you can see Cal versus Darcy then. That'll be this week. But I'll just say congrats to Cal. Screw it. Cal, you on that
Nice.
one. Big,
Thanks,
Well
guys.
done, Cal.
big.
Well done.
And if it was 2-2, let's just say you get the bonus points for beautiful segueing earlier in the show.
Nice. We'll take it. Sweet. Speaking of beautiful segueing, let's just roll into the awards. Because now that I've picked up the points for the segues, I don't need to do good ones anymore. I got the win in the bag. But yeah, the ones everyone's been waiting for. Let's start with signing of the season, and we'll leave Hammer of the Year for the final part of the pod. I don't think there's that much debate around this one. Personally, I think we talked a bit about Max Kilman earlier as Unsung Hero. But I just think Wan-Bissaka, for the price that we got him for, I don't think there can be any real debate about that being potentially not even only our signing of the season, but it's got to be one of the signings of the season in terms of value to impact ratio. Listen to me. Value to impact ratio. Wan-Bissaka was the best. Premier League signing of the
Cal's
season.
been working his corporate job for the rest of the day. Can you tell?
It's actually in the public sector. So
sorry.
No, it's the third sector. Actually, I think the charity sector is not the public sector, famously. Otherwise, we'd get a lot more funding. But that's a different podcast. But Wan-Bissaka, anything else? Anyone?
For the price, you can't beat it.
Cool. All right. Well, that was easy, wasn't it?
There you go.
I suppose, though, that's a nice way to lead into Hammer of the Year, because he was the Hammer of the Year. The segues are back, boys. But you know what? I'll pass over to you guys, but I'm going to say that he wasn't my Hammer of the Year.
He was my Hammer of the Year. I voted for him.
Well, you were wrong, but that's fine.
I think I get why people will go for Bowen, because especially with the sort of, I mean, he's just there for us in vital moments all the time. Really, without him, Lord knows what would have happened this season. I mean, when we didn't have him, it was not a very good period of the season at all. But I just think there's also been periods of the season where we've been completely reliant on Wan-Bissaka to make anything happen at all. Those moments where Jarrod Bowen wasn't firing. And I think since maybe the first, I can't really remember what the sort of the crossroads was, but something switched for Wan-Bissaka maybe a third of the way through the season, and he suddenly turned it on. And I think then the level has just never dropped. There's still flaws in his game. He's not the perfect player at all, but I think he's probably been at the most consistent high level across the season. Bowen's maybe reached higher peaks when he has played really well. I don't think there's really an argument about that. But in terms of consistency of performance across the season, I think Wan-Bissaka's probably been the best in the squad.
Fair. I hear the argument, but as you've alluded to, I voted for Bowen. I just think in a season that was pretty dross, I think for Bowen to maintain the level of performance that we've got used to, in spite of team performances dropping to a nadir, I think is super impressive. And I think it makes you wonder what sort of impact he could have at a team that is outperforming West Ham in this season. Obviously, I hope that never happens, and I don't think it will. I don't think he is looking to leave. I also don't think the sort of horizons line up in terms of age, time, money spent. I think there's other options out there that clubs that are looking for that quality of player could go and pick up and have for a longer time. So that's good for us. But yeah, I just think in a season where there wasn't too much to shout about, it's probably a two-horse race. But I think for me, just you need goals. Goals win games, as they say. And Bowen was setting them up and scoring them. So I think that can't be overlooked. But yeah, I think your shouts for Wan-Bissaka are completely fair. Before I come to you, Charlie, I just had a thought. and I was just thinking about Wan-Bissaka and everything he's good at, particularly in the middle. What do you think he'd be like as a box-to-box midfielder?
I wouldn't want to find out, to be honest. Some of those first touches are great when you're out wide, but yeah, I don't want to now go and criticise my hammer of the year, but I just don't think the speed of thought is there with Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah,
he's very
fair.
good with limited decisions to make, which is what you get in a wide area. I think in the middle he would quite quickly become overwhelmed.
Sounds like something that we might have to do on FM over on Patreon. No, Cal.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to have to
so I'm saying a little
just
tinker
thinking
was
what we're missing. We're missing midfielders with legs, and he's good at linking up play in the middle third, albeit on the right hand side of the pitch rather than the middle. But yeah, he's got energy. We need energy.
Well, I would
You also
rather
need a lot of other things, but
well, yeah, I would rather him than my hammer of the year pick, which is Max Kilman. I think
his spoiler is back in the chat.
I've been doing it for 10 years on West Ham YouTube, and I'm not going to stop now.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I fully respect. I think Wan-Bissaka has been, especially like Darcy said, since he's turned on, it's just been ridiculous. But I think there was a big chunk at the beginning of the season where, and not particularly from any fault of his own, but just like it was just lost. It was just a mess. And again, I don't think that's particularly his bad. And I think Bowen, again, I think there's been long periods. I think for everyone, you can kind of pick out periods, apart from one guy who no one else to mention, which is Thomas Souček. I think Souček was dangerously close for me because he just is. He's consistent. He's the guy who you would want in your team starting regardless, even though he doesn't really suit the vibe. He is the guy to do it, and he will always give you 10,000%. And like, I have no bad words to say about that guy. So I almost would say Thomas Souček, but I just think Max Kilman gets a hard time because of the price that we paid, and that is obvious and very fair because we have spent a hell of a lot of money on him. But if you were to say at the beginning of the season, or just before the summer, if you picked out a bunch of centre backs in that, Todibo, for example, he's so good. Like, Kilman is so good at everything. Well, pretty much everything. There's some notable flaws in his game, but that's just West Ham players, right? He's been the most consistent player for me. He's been the most reliable player for me. He has been someone who, in my opinion, has essentially lived up to the price we paid for him. We paid a hell of a lot. And he's someone who I think we can rely on. Thomas Souček was close for me, but I'll go Max Kilman.
Nice. Okay. Well, 3 different picks for Hammer of the Year, which is interesting at the end of a season where no one really was that good. So yeah, maybe that's because no one was that good. Nah, that's being harsh, man. Wan-Bissaka, Bowen, and Kilman did all have good seasons. And what a nice way to finish a season where all 3 of them get credit. That brings us to the end of the pod, a bumper episode, exploring a bumper season. I hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it, in spite of all of the stuff that we had to endure throughout the course of the season. But it's certainly been interesting, if not impressive. I think that's a fair way to summarise. But yeah, we'll be heading into what we expect to be a super busy summer. I dare say now is as good a time as any to sign up to the Patreon, because even though there's no football going on, there's still going to be a lot of content. There's lots of work to be done. And if you're anything like me, I probably get weirdly, maybe even more excited about the summers than the seasons, because it's a fantasy land that you can exist in, and things can only go well when I'm in charge, because it's my decisions and it's everything that I want is justified. It's also fun as well, I think, now that we know that West Ham are taking a data-led approach to recruitment. There's an even better chance this summer that we actually suggest some signings that actually happen. So yeah, that could be fun to see and track. There'll be all sorts of other good stuff going on. Charlie's already said the quiz show. Lots of opportunity to get involved as well and engage with us on there. Yeah, so please do get over there for one last time. Patreon.com/analyticsunited. It's a big thanks from us. I'll also extend a big thank you from Jack, who is probably somewhere on the side of a mountain, digging up trees, I think, last time I spoke to him. not how I'd spend
Why
my
not?
summer, but why not? Exactly
Why not dig up
that.
trees as opposed to digging out managers? It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, see, there we go. And on that delightful bombshell, we'll see you in extra time, where we will be discussing our personal moments of the season, opposition performance of the season, both team and individual, the False Dawn Award, which is a moment that we wrongly thought we were back, and my God, there's been a few of those, and also the WTF Award. You all know what that means, and you all know that you want to know what we think it means. So please come and join us on Extra Time. Thanks and goodbye.